Hi everyone, in this video, we'll talk about shadow play. I'll share my tips on how to identify the right location and position your camera angle to create these type of photos. I'll show you plenty of examples behind the scenes so we can all learn from the experience. If you're interested, feel free to stick around. Light has always been the most critical factor in photography. Luckily, almost any lighting situation is favorable. There's no such thing as bad lighting. Unlike landscape photography, where midday is considered as bad, people always chase after sunrise and sunset. Here are some shots I took on rainy days and in bad weather. I'll probably make another video on that. Now the question is, how to find quality light? When people talk about harsh daylight, we are referring to the time between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m., which makes up the majority of the day. This is great because we have plenty of time to utilize the light. On a sunny day, I usually go out after lunch and start scouting. I look for interesting shadows that are not normally visible on an overcast day. When the sun is high up, the angle of the shadow will be steep. Think of it as a projection, where the light source acts like a projector. Any interesting shapes that place in front of the sun, it will cast shadows. Before I show you the photos that I really like, allow me to walk you through the process of finding the location. It begins with understanding how light interacts with the urban environment. For example, here is the main street. The light is coming from this angle. So in theory, anyone stands between the light and my camera will cast a shadow. We have a lot going on here. It was challenging to single out a subject from the crowd. Additionally, the background was cluttered, distracting from the intended focus. I have one picture of this delivery guy that was closer to the camera. Was it a good photo? I don't know. Let's move on to the next junction. Is it better or worse? I tried a couple shots. I still didn't think there was sufficient separation for the subject to stand out. Finally, at the third junction, I got a better view. What I did is I stepped a little further away from the main street. The direction of people approaching has changed. With people walking towards the camera, the shadows fell perfectly within the frame, adding depth and separation between the subject and background. So I stayed a good 15 minutes experimenting different angles and discovered this vantage point. You see the tall building in the background. That gives us a focal point. The light rays are entering the lens from the same angle. Then we have silhouettes and long shadows. I think this is the better shot out of the whole batch. Remember I said the light source is a projector. I usually look for structures like pillars and arches that would block some of the light. It was perfect for capturing interplay between lightness and darkness. In my mind, I have already listed out locations that have distinct structures. If you pay attention, pillars are everywhere. For this set, I use a long lens, so the scene looks compressed. The elements appear to be close to each other. And the gentleman was caught in between. Which one do you like better? An archway is another option. It works like a picture frame for the subject. Again, I used a portrait lens to achieve this effect. It was an 85. Once I spot the subject walking towards me, I have about 5 seconds to capture the shot because I know if the subject comes too close, it won't be a full body shot. So you have to think about how big the subject is. I also seek out areas where the light slips through the gaps between buildings, creating a high contrast scene. Like this time, I found a spot in the back alley that wasn't too busy. I spent about half an hour there, working on the composition while patiently waiting for potential subjects to enter the frame. I envisioned how I wanted the bright and the dark zones to interact within the frame and where I wanted the shadow to land. Here are 2 shots. Let's talk about the composition. In the first shot, I incorporated graffiti in the background to add visual interest and provide a unique backdrop for my subject. For the second shot, I changed the angle to capture a projected shadow. By darkening the rest of the frame in post-processing, I ensured that the viewer's focus remains solely on the subject. I kept this cone in the corner. Maybe I should remove it with AI? Sometimes the light forms a triangle on the ground. It's like a stage light. Very interesting. This kind of geometric shapes can also be found in the background. It divides the frame into different sections, and this couple happened to be there. The light changes so fast. I remember taking a walk and coming back to find that the angle of the light has shifted. Here's another example. The girl was just looking for her phone in her bag, but to the audience, it might look like she had to duck down to avoid the overhang hitting her head. Initially, I picked this location just because of the concrete wall and the angle of the sunlight. Since the background is brighter than the foreground, the subjects became silhouettes. I captured this with burst mode, so I was able to select this particular shot that is visually interesting. When the subject is backlit, this is what we call the rim light. You see the light wraps around their silhouette, creating a distinctive glow. Here's another location. I first noticed triangles, so I decided to hit the shutter button whenever I see people show up. But I quickly realized it was too broad, lacked focus, and was hard to find a balance between the subject and the background. With a few adjustments, I settled on this angle. I used a small aperture, so you can see the light coming from behind wrap around the subject nicely. I really like this picture of this gentleman with the coffee in his hand. And this lady was busy texting. These are ordinary moments that encapsulate the essence of our daily lives. You might notice that I always talk about the subject-background separation. In bright daylight, you can go into the shades and point a camera outside. This is a huge space where people are walking around, and the light is hitting the wall in the background. If you have a black and white sense in your mind, you will know that the highlights are white and the silhouettes are black. That creates a clear separation between the subject and its surroundings. This is a blank canvas, which stories unfold. Here I have some tourists, men in suits with briefcase, and businessmen on the phone. To me, it portrays the vibrancy and hustle of life. As Ansel Adams once said, you don't take photograph, you make it. For this type of photography, observation is more important than the technique. Practicing how to identify potential subjects is something I do every day. You can do this even without a camera in your hand. Just observe. So the next time you go out to a shoot, you can use that information to improvise. Are you a good observer? In the next video, I'll talk about how to make the most of bad weather. If you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments and hit the like button. Thanks so much for your time. I'll see you in the next one.